Welcome to Park Media. I'm your host, Vince Emanuele, and today we're talking with Byron Sigcho Lopez, who is the alderman of the 25th Ward in Chicago. He's a member of the DSA, and he's a friend of the program. Welcome to the program, Byron.
Thank you, Vince. Happy to be back. I think I've been in the show before, so thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. Tell the people who might not know a little bit about the 25th Ward. Where is that located in the city? What neighborhoods does it encompass?
So the 25th Ward is on the southwest side of Chicago. We have the Chinatown community, Pilsen, which is a predominantly Latinx community. We have little parts of Little Italy, little parts of West Loop, Abla Homes, Barbara Jean Wright, McKinley Park. So this is one of the South Loop. So we have one of the most diverse areas in the city. So it's close to downtown. So we're close to downtown, but it encompasses neighborhoods on the southwest side of the city.
Now, you took office last May, in May of 2019, correct? And you defeated a longtime Democratic machine candidate, an incumbent for 23 years, Danny Solis. Tell us a little bit about the process of getting elected, and then also, what this last year has been like for you.
Yeah. So I think, I ran against the incumbent 4 years ago, the incumbent 5 years ago now. My predecessor, which had a FBI investigation, part of a larger scheme of indictments that happened here in the city of Chicago. So my predecessor was part of that investigation. There's at least one other alderman involved that's currently on trial. And of course, there's been a number of indictments in Chicago. We are infamously the most corrupt city in America. And I think that there's no doubt about the issues that we have in our city. So the election for us in our community was a matter of survival more than anything else. Surviving as a community, obviously bringing people together for policies that are needed. The issue of police accountability is not new to us. We have been fighting that issue for years. Before I was alderman, when I was an organizer, teacher. The issues of displacement have been a key issue. My predecessor received obscene amount of money from developers and special interest groups, selling out his own community day by day. So we had churches that were going to turn into luxury condos, bars coming in without proper licensing. They really made a business. This was not public service. This was a business for some of them. And so the community organized. 5 years ago, I was 70 votes short of the runoff. When I run, of course, as people know, the Democratic machine was pretty much united to stop any kind of, grassroots effort, because there's a lot of stake here. There's a billionaire, the billionaire contracts here. We have the 78, which is a major development in the city, bunch of huge projects that were coming in, part of the reason why a lot of corruption scandals happen here in this ward. So we had, all sorts of the spectrums of course, the Democratic machine, the quote unquote progressives that also took dirty money and they were determined to stop us. In fact, most of the opposition outside of the Democratic machine came from quote unquote progressive candidates who were taking dirty money as well. And they wanted to be labeled as progressives or whatever they were calling themselves. So this is very important that we and I think people knew better. People know better that this is a time, unprecedented time in our country. And I'm glad and proud that my community elected me and trusted me to guide the ward in a different direction. I think people wanted change. And they wanted a structural change, not only change, but a structural change. And I'm glad that, more people, as we organize in our community. Before I was an alderman, I was an organizer and a teacher. So people have seen our work on the ground fighting school closings, fighting, for police accountability, fighting to make sure that we have affordable housing, fighting corruption. So I was glad that our organizing efforts on the ground paid off. I always recommend and I always advise our young people or next generation that we deserve better as a community. We need to make sure that we are organizing on the ground. We need to make sure that we're true and honest to our values, and cutting deals, looking the other way, has never been acceptable, but it was for a while. I'm glad that I was able to capture the sentiment of my community across the world, and we have a fighting chance. I said there's a lot of work ahead of us, but at least I tell you that we have a fighting chance. I'm proud to be a Democratic Socialist. I am proud to have a platform that reflects the need of our community. And right now, given the unprecedented times that we live, we cannot fall short of what's needed to bring relief and policies that work for our communities.
That was going to be my next question. Your community, like so many other communities, including our own and many throughout Northwest Indiana, has been ravaged by all kinds of different issues. Systemic poverty, we're going through gentrification process, unaccountable policing, so on and so on. Now the pandemic hits, you've got this economic recession that hits as a result. Also, we have the uprisings taking place. How's the community holding up? What kind of solidarity have you seen in the community? And what kind of steps are you guys taking now to deal with these ongoing issues? I mean, give us a little sense of the kind of things that you're working on, and also the challenges you're facing. That could be either from the mayor's office, wherever it is. What does that situation look like for you guys?
I mean, it's rough on the ground. It's really tough for a lot. I mean, we represent a large number of undocumented families, for instance, that have not received any sort of relief from the federal government. We've seen very little from the local governments. We also have seen, and that was not new, I think that we've seen a lot of police repression, right? Of course, as people are dissatisfied and frustrated and angry, and rightly so, because of the lack of government response, as we've seen that we are represented by politicians, at the state and municipal level. We have a mayor that governs for corporations and billionaires, has publicly thanked the richest man of Illinois for giving a $2 million contribution while he continues to avoid taxes. So I think that that's the kind of response that we've seen. The mayor has been already reluctant to talk about redistributing resources in common sense contract. There's a Chicago Public Schools contract for $33 million. Our schools are even closed right now. She doesn't want to redirect those $33 million instead of going to the Chicago Police Department to redirect them towards relief for communities and youth in particular. We have a mayor who continues to reject a strong bill for police accountability that has failed to listen to the concerns in terms of housing, in terms of medical, even relief for the communities that has a lot of first responders, especially in communities of color, where we have a large number of essential workers who are getting sick and do not have access to medical care. They don't have access to proper equipment. And on top of that, when things have gotten rougher and there are layoffs, we don't even have any kind of relief. So that's on the ground. It's been challenging. What we have seen, though, we've seen the extraordinary actions by ordinary people. And I think that we've seen people coming together with partnerships among public institutions. So the U of I system, for instance, helped us set up a COVID-19 clinic here in our ward. We were able to also, through a partnership with a professor in U of I, who helped us set up a food pantry, right, that has received multiple support by different people coming together. So we have a food pantry who's helping relieve what it should be a government function, but has become a community effort. So we've seen from the testing side through food pantry, and also like the response, to the anti-Blackness issues that we have dealt with, overwhelming support of all the community. We have already seen at least we have seen at least 2 peaceful marches in our community during high tension levels in our community. We see overwhelming peaceful support in our community, supporting the efforts for police accountability, supporting the efforts to defund a Chicago Police Department that is full of corruption. We need accountability, and we can deviate and reallocate resources for mental health services, for relief for families, for young services. So there are a lot of conversations happening on the ground. So I'm very proud of our community coming in solidarity. So when tensions were rising, there was an effort to really pitch communities against each other. And I think that, from faith leaders to community organizers, their response on the ground step up to the occasion. And despite of the efforts to pitch communities against each other, we have an administration that focused all the efforts of protection in downtown, in the richest areas of the city, while they left neighborhoods, especially vulnerable neighborhoods, almost on their own. And I tell you, as of course we have a lot of issues and a lot of tension in our neighborhoods, but I tell you, people of color came together, and in a real tense situation, they raised to the occasion. We saw with clarity what was the attempt, and now we're talking about the real issues affecting our communities. So I tell you that the organizing on the ground to talk about issues early on is very important. So these neoliberal attempts to pitch communities against each other, to deviate the attention from taxing corporations, taxing the super rich, to really bring relief to our communities instead of what we're talking about, with is more austerity, more police, the same old recipes that have failed us. So I'm really glad that our communities have started to organize to push for systemic change.
Have you been seeing pushback from the police, and from your experience, have you been getting pushback lately? Now this new push, I think, and it's even in our area. I mean, we've seen more organizations, more rallies, more marches and actions than we've maybe ever seen in our region before. And I've lived here since I was in high school. So to see the amount of people in the streets, white, black, brown, across neighborhoods, suburban neighborhoods, rural areas, I'm happy to hear about the solidarity, because some of the messaging we're getting down here was, there's a lot of tension between Latinx community and the activists who are in the streets. We didn't want to downplay that, but we also felt like that was being overblown by the corporate media, and that people wanted to really push this narrative of like races and ethnicities against each other, instead of, hey, this is an issue that cuts across class lines, or across racial lines. A lot of working class and poor people are in the street standing in solidarity. That's good to hear. What is the response that you've seen on behalf of the police officers?
Oh, certainly, there's definitely, intimidation of, especially from the Fraternal Order of Police, the president, which is an officer that is investigated by misconduct himself, openly a Trump supporter, which he instigates with his social media presence, intimidation to aldermen who think differently, and obviously opposes any kind of reform or police accountability effort. So I do think that we have seen that, and I think that we gotta. That's our time, as public officials and leaders in our community, to step up and condemn this kind of intimidation. But more than anything else, organize and make sure that our message is not deviated by these corporate interests. I personally was in an interview with Fox News where they were trying to instigate this message of racialized lines, deviating completely from the real issue what we're hearing on the ground, which was a message that was unequivocal about police accountability, about making sure that we don't invest 40% of our budget in the police while we neglect funding for social services, a message that hold politicians accountable to bring real relief and systemic change. So and charge, basically, and the biggest problem was, of course, when we start talking about taxing corporations, taxing the super rich, we see the corporate media obviously coming to the rescue and responding, trying to control the narrative and pitches against each other. So it was important that we were out there on the ground, challenging corporate media and responding to these attempt to pitches against each other unequivocally and with a strong message that really condemned this anti-blackness, racism, the racism that we saw, but also that condemned the silence when it came to pushing the state and the city for real systemic changes, and the platform that we're hearing in the streets and in the grassroots level, and it's growing and growing with dissatisfaction with a system that is corrupt to the core. And we need to get to the core of it, which is corporations, developers, billionaires, Wall Street continue to buying politicians have it on their pockets to ignore to ignore Main Street, to ignore the necessity of organizing or community to have a real platform, real legislators, and real laws that protect us and help us to thrive. Every community, should be receiving the resources that we need. The Trump administration is not only a disaster, but as an immoral administration. And the fact that we don't have a united front, and Democrats are also complicit with this, because we haven't seen in ground at the legislative effort with laws and with a strong platform, a real message that will resonate with our community. We should not even have a contested election against Trump. This should be a landslide. And we don't have that kind of message because we continue to see big money in politics. So that's what I'm a firm believer of grassroots and the Democratic Socialist movement, that I do think that represent a real option for our communities.
That was going to be my next question and one of my last questions. Talk to me a little bit about the DSA. You're a member of the DSA. There's other members on the Chicago City Council. You're not alone. You have a nice, it's a smaller crew, but you got a small crew of people who are on the same page. They come from that background. They come from the grassroots. Talk to me a little bit about the work that you're trying to do within the council, some of the challenges you're facing, and what has your experience so far been? Do you see more Democrats sort of moving in your direction? What has that been like?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we see a status quo that is very much trying to keep the same policies and the same failures and failed recipes of the past. They want to continue to push for that. I think that the like you said, what gives me hope is not only I'm not alone in the council. There's at least 6 of us, and there's others, of course, who sympathize and also understand the unprecedented moments that we live. I'm not sure if the system is moving our direction, but I tell you that I don't think the system is going to reform itself. I do think that it is for us organizing on the ground, organizing on issues, but also organizing electorally to make sure that we have a city council that is reflective or reflects the issues and the desire of the constituents that elected us. I still see big money in politics. I still see an administration, a neoliberal administration that has nothing about progressive. So the progressive credentials now, I don't know how, what progressive means anymore. But I tell you that I do think that there's a growing movement in the streets. There's a growing movement in each neighborhood across the city. And I have hope that is going to translate not only on working on issues, but working on having legislators in every level of government that reflect the needs and reflect the desire of our communities, so that we can pass legislation that is needed, legislation that is being on the works for years, that we cannot delay any longer. We've seen now, for instance, efforts for having a civilian oversight of the police board that is now have become more and more urgent, and I see more colleagues talking about it. We also started to see more talks about affordable housing and laws that protect the most vulnerable, that we can create more affordable housing, that we can talk about local hiring, that is actually local hiring and not what developers interpretate about local hiring, that we can talk about access to medical care for everyone, universal medical care, so that people are not afraid of getting sick, and we don't have people working 2-3 jobs with no benefits, barely making its meet. So I think that we have a time for organizing that is unprecedented. But make no mistake that the out there pseudo progressives that I saw already, I know them very well, and what they try to do, even when I run against them, that co-opt the message, that try to sell us short of what is needed. So I still see that with neoliberal public officials and of course the conservatives that are not going to change. We cannot expect them to change because they are in the pockets of special interest groups. We ought to organize on the ground on issues, and hoping that we have leaders who, and I know the narrative is don't get involved in politics, it's dirty, don't do that, don't vote. We have to get out of that. We have so many important issues right now. We have the census coming up. It is important, an important campaign. We do have elections coming up. And as issues are important, so do our representatives. So when it comes down to take critical votes, we have people that we can trust because they have been on the ground organizing with us. And I hope that this message that is growing in Chicago continues to grow across the city and across the country.
Last question for you, Byron. Talk to me about the importance of being a member of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and any sort of last advice you're going to have. There's going to be people listening to this in this movement moment. Maybe it's the first time they're getting involved. Maybe they are scared of getting involved with electoral campaigns. Maybe they're intimidated by what's going on. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of being a member of DSA, what that means to you, and also your advice for people who are getting involved with these movements right now.
Yeah, I often hear that, it doesn't matter who is in office, and I do think that that's a dangerous premise. It does matter who makes the decision. It does matter. I think we leave that today more than ever. I do think that we have to move towards a different scenario when we don't have to choose from the lesser two evils. So we have to create an alternative that reflects, what we want to see in public officials. I take with great pride to represent my community. It is an honor to represent a community. And we have lost, absolutely, that we have lost the morality of our politics. We have lost our real mission in government. And there are right-wing extremists whose premise and only goal is to dismantle government. Yeah. We have right now under the Trump administration people who are making decisions on the environment, on affordable housing, on Medicare, that do not believe in government. And that is a huge problem, that they want to privatize services, that want to rip off social services, social security, medical care, you name it. It is important that we regain the public sphere. There's no conspiracy, there are big money that is determined to dominate the public media. The corporate media is completely in the pockets of billionaires like the Koch brothers that have been on an agenda for years trying to dismantle government, and Trump has consolidated this corporate agenda. There is a dangerous path towards fascism, and there's a dangerous path towards authoritarian regimes that we have to make sure that we don't allow. Here in Chicago, we already have seen this, and a lot of Democrat mayors have made very, very concerning choices when it comes to, repressing the peaceful protests that we've seen. We've seen all sorts of, really dangerous precedent on how police has been used not to protect people, but to protect capital. So we have to make sure that we are real clear that for us to change the landscape in our communities, we have not only to talk about organizing on the ground, which is very important. I've been a teacher and an organizer. I understand the importance of grassroots organizing, but I also have come to understand the importance of electoral organizing, because it does matter ultimately who makes the decision. And we need to make sure that today more than ever, we move towards a system where we can truly choose between options that are reflective of our values and principles. So I encourage everyone out there to organize at every single level of government, every single campaign, grassroots campaign, whatever you're passionate about, if it's environmental justice, if it's police accountability, if it's affordable housing, if it's immigration, if it's immigrant rights, whatever that is, workers' rights, to organize on the ground and to organize at every level. Do not believe that, doesn't matter who is in office. We need to make sure that we have leaders with integrity and principles who listen to us. And I do think it's possible. This is being a right-wing extreme agenda has dominated or mainstream and corporate media, and the message out there, it is fitting into this narrative that there's nothing we can do, that's all that's all it takes, or that's all we have. But if you see, with Alejandro Ocasio-Cortez and in other, Representative Omar, there are public officials out there who are making a big difference, and I think that we have to grow that movement.
Look at Karina Shawant in Seattle. Unbelievable.
Yep.
I mean, I've been so impressed with what's going on there. All right, man. I know you're busy. I appreciate you even taking time for us. I know this isn't Fox News or one of the big cable channels, so thank you, though, man.
Which is good.
Yeah, no, but we appreciate you. We really do. And, we look to the kind of efforts that you guys do up there with some inspiration for us out here. So, yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you, Vince. Take care.
Take care, buddy. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
You've been watching Park Media. I'm your host, Vince Emanuele, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey, thank you for watching and listening. If you think this program is worth a pack of cigarettes or a cheeseburger, you could become a Patreon for as little as $3 a month. The link is available at our website, parkmedia.org. That's PARCmedia.org. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Also, you could find us on Instagram at Park Media, Facebook at Politics, Art, Roots, Culture, and you could find me on Twitter at Vince Emanuele.